Look, I know being shy locks you up. You want to say something, or at the very least just be comfortable in your own skin. What if I told you that this was a learned behavior and that you could unlearn it? Well, in this video, I'm going to give you the keys to unlocking yourself and to be calm and collected so you can effortlessly allow your true unapologetic self to shine and connect with those around you, even strangers or even a very attractive woman. How's it going? Ed Baxter here from Genuine Attraction, unapologetic dating and relationship mastery for conscious men, where we teach shy and introverted men how to be their unapologetic, secure, and heartfelt selves so they can attract their perfect partner. So if you're new here and you enjoy what you're learning, consider subscribing. And hey, at any point during the video, check out the show notes and the links in the description below. So let's get started. Are you really shy? Let's talk about what shyness really is. A lot of people say that they aren't really shy, they're just introverted. Shyness seems to be synonymous with introversion. I guess it's a lot nicer way of putting it, and people don't want to say they have social anxiety. But in my experience, most people who say they are introverted are really just shy. And the people who say they are shy really just have social anxiety. So you may ask, if I'm not really an introvert and I'm really just shy, and I'm shy because I have social anxiety, then what is being an introvert? Introversion doesn't mean you're afraid of social situations, groups of people, or even interacting with strangers. I know this personally as I'm very, very introverted, but I can step out of it when the situation requires, like right now while shooting this video. Introverts typically prefer to be by themselves, not because they have social anxiety, but because they usually have something they believe is more interesting going on in their lives, or in their own mind, like their imagination, than interacting socially. An introvert has no problem holding conversations as long as they are deep and meaningful. In other words, they get trained in social situations not because of social anxiety, but because they find that particular social setting incredibly uninteresting, and it is usually pulling them away from something they'd rather be doing. So they get bored easily and feel like they are wasting their time. Now that boredom is a weakness of introversion, and it leads to dismissing a lot of good people, but that's a topic for another video. And as you can see, introversion is very different from having anxiety in a social setting. Introversion is simply a preference. With social anxiety, though, the very thought of interaction with other people brings up feelings of anxiety generated by underlying fears of non-acceptance. They feel that they will be judged poorly if they don't perform adequately, that people will consider them a loser. People with social anxiety fear that they will be discovered as a fraud and that they are not truly worthy of love and acceptance, so they hide. For instance, have you ever seen a small child? Have you ever seen how they interact with other kids, strangers, and anybody who will give them time and attention? They may be a little bit shy at first, but that's because they have a genetically innate fear of physical danger from a large adult, which is perfectly understandable and really smart. But once they see that they have nothing to fear, they open right up and want all of that person's time and attention. They don't have social anxiety. So you can see that this isn't something that you're born with. It's a learned behavior. And if it's learned, then there's a real chance that you can unlearn it. So let's learn how to unlearn your social anxiety. When you were a very small child, you had very little or no negative self-talk. You would just go about your day and do things you wanted to do. You'd have fun, you'd play. You didn't think about other people's emotions at all. You were completely egocentric. As you got older, as you developed empathy, you were taught to not accept parts of yourself, or you were told to just shut up and be quiet, and that you aren't accepted the way you are with your own unique idiosyncrasies. You internalized these negative experiences. You started to believe that these things are true because they are coming from adults, kids older than you, and perhaps even your peers who seem to know more than you, especially if it's someone you hold in high regard, like a pretty girl you had a crush on, or maybe a parent or an uncle who makes fun of you for liking somebody or being a certain way. Your true self gets shamed. And when someone shames you, they are telling you that you should hate yourself for not being what they think you should be. It's incredibly toxic for children, and children are very susceptible to these things because they are so impressionable. You know, they take it all in with no filter. So now that you know where it starts, let's use an analogy of why it grows into social anxiety. Let's say that you're a small child and nobody has ever really shamed you for being yourself. I mean, you're 5 years old and you wake up excited one morning at 5:30 and Your emotional availability to you is at 100%. In fact, you are so overflowing with openness and happiness that you just want to run out of your room and just see what happens. You don't have a plan other than to experience life. And you're already enjoying the hell out of it. Your mom hears your footsteps and comes out of her bedroom. She's incredibly groggy, cranky, and not in an accepting mood for your immediate requests for food. So she says, "Oh, why can't you just sleep in? Don't you realize we're all super tired? Don't you feel bad about waking everybody up?" No? Well, you should. And your 5-year-old self has no way of processing this. You might only understand a little bit of what she's saying, but you know it's not good, and these words and emotions go right into your unfiltered childlike subconscious. Sure, the happiness of the day eventually overrides her non-acceptance, her guilt trip, and shaming of you for being just what you are, a hungry, happy 5-year-old. But because you can't process what's going on here, you ignore it, and you overlook it because you want to be happy. You want to eat and you want to play. You feel off because you don't know what you did wrong. What came to you naturally was not accepted. You weren't told ahead of time that you would fail. You just know now that you did fail and that you should feel bad about not knowing why you failed. And because you failed, you aren't accepted. You can't win. She created an emotionally vengeful situation, a trap. It was by her design, by the way. Think of your willpower capacity of the day like a checking account. When a situation like this arises, you don't have the ability or willingness to process it. You push it under the rug, or what I like to call the negative emotional credit card account. Since you aren't willing to fully look at it and process it, you push it onto the negative emotional credit card to be processed or paid off later, if ever. Over time, when painful experiences happen over and over, and as you don't process these feelings by escaping into TV, video games, masturbation, beer, sports, etc., they go on the emotional credit card. The credit card balance gets larger and larger as the years go by. The problem with credit, as you know, is that it comes with interest. This interest appears in your mind as negative self-talk, beliefs of not being enough, being unlovable, and being a failure. And interest must be paid off daily, the moment you wake up. Every day, you have to pay off that interest with your daily happiness and willpower checking account. The interest always gets paid first, and sometimes constantly throughout the day. As you fill up that emotional credit card, you have less and less happiness and willpower from one day to the next. There's less about yourself that you absolutely love, the less about life that you love. At some point, that emotional credit card debt is so huge, so gigantic that just the interest alone takes all of your daily happiness and willpower. You wake up stressed, you wake up tired, and maybe you don't realize your tiredness is just emotional exhaustion. And that your emotional exhaustion is coming from the interest that needs to be paid. Loads and loads of negative self-talk, of beating yourself up, but by now the debt is so gargantuan, you don't even want to acknowledge that it's even there. It's too scary to face. And you wouldn't even know where to begin, so you escape even more, and now you're putting even the interest on the credit card. The debt collectors come knocking at the door, constantly begging to be paid, but we don't have any emotional capacity to pay it because we're tapped out, we're exhausted. In fact, we don't even have enough to pay the interest anymore. All the negative emotion saps our energy for the day, and we have nothing left for ourselves. We are overflowing with emotional debt, and constant anxiety kicks in. This is where social anxiety comes from. It's part of this negative self-talk, this debt that must be paid. You will never feel better until you pay some of the debt off. And you'll never feel calm, collected, and comfortable in your own skin until you pay most of it off. Here's an example of a scenario where you need some willpower and happiness to get you through it. Some self-love and acceptance, but you no longer have access to it because it's all used up constantly by not dealing with your emotions. Say you go to a party and you're standing around not knowing what to say. The negative self-talk kicks in and telling you you're a loser and that nobody likes you. The debt collectors are calling in and they want to be paid right now during the party. This freaks you out and you have to leave the party because you don't want to pay that interest. You don't want to deal with the negative emotions, especially in public. And so what happens is you stop going to social events. And that's like avoiding the debt collector calls. This doesn't solve your problem either. It's just another way of running from it. You know, you don't go to parties, you don't ask that girl out, you don't ask for that raise or go after that job. You don't make moves in life because you avoid paying the emotional debt collector. You live in a deficit. You're bankrupt. And new stresses or thoughts of stress are just completely overwhelming, and so you'd rather do nothing. You're emotionally broke, trying to avoid the next panic attack. You may falsely believe that you just need to dig deeper and tough it out, that life is stressful, but this is not true. Okay, so after all this long explanation, what is anxiety? It means being drastically overdrawn in your emotional bank account. And you're just used to it. You're used to feeling crappy every day because it came on gradually. But you don't have to feel crappy every day. You can feel great again, just like your 5-year-old self. So how do I get unstuck? The quick answer is you just got to start paying off that debt. And you may ask yourself, okay, that's great, but how do I actually do that? I'll tell you. But realize that it isn't something you're going to fix overnight. You've got a lifetime of debt built up, and so it's going to take a while. The good news is that it won't take you as long as you might think. First thing you got to do is you must be willing to live with your emotions and not escape from them by distracting yourself. If you're sad, you must be sad. If you're afraid, you must be afraid. If you're angry, you must allow anger. If you have anxiety, you must allow anxiety. You must be willing to notice your emotional state and not try to change it or distract yourself, but to fully feel it until it runs out without added commentary. It's not going to be easy, and you can't fake it until you make it, like some coaches will tell you to do. And they will tell you to. They'll say that having anxiety about approaching a beautiful woman is natural and that you gotta push through it, that you have to toughen up. What they don't understand is they are just getting a bigger emotional credit card and becoming more narcissistic through self-denial. It always catches up to you. If you don't believe me, read The Game by Neil Strauss. I'll spoil the ending. All the men end up depressed and hate themselves. I call it the textbook in what not to do if you want to have a great relationship with yourself and the women in your life. Again, you're going to have to push through a certain amount of fear of feeling your emotions if you have any reasonable expectation that this anxiety is going to get any better. So here are some affirmations to help you get started. The first one, I'm a good man with good intentions. Being a good man is a badge of honor, and people notice that. People are willing to see the good in me and accept me for who I am. People love me in spite of my mistakes, and so do I. I am not defined by what I can't do, but what I'm willing to face. The good news is that you can't be expected to run before you walk. So let's start a very, very basic exercise that you'll want to do at least once a day, preferably whenever you feel any kind of negative emotion. So first, find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Set a timer for about 20 minutes, close your eyes, and breathe deeply into your lower belly. Feel whatever emotion is going on inside of you right now. Allow that emotion to simply be there. Don't look for reasons as to why it's there, because it doesn't matter. Don't indulge in the emotion by using your imagination to make it worse. And don't judge the emotion, it just simply is. At some point, it will go away. It really will. And when it does go away, then you do it all over again. You imagine a scenario that brings up the anxiety. And that's all you do. You just repeat that process until you've hit the 20-minute timer. And that's it. It's very simple. As you go through this process and release emotion after emotion, you'll start feeling better. You'll have more emotional capacity every day that you do this. You are essentially paying off your emotional debts. You're allowing years of emotional repression and suppression to unravel. I have faith that you can do this, but you must do it every day. If you can't do 20 minutes and you can only do like 20 minutes, realize that something is better than nothing, but you aren't going to get where you need to go with only 2 minutes. You're not gonna. And I've personally done hundreds of hours of this work, and it helps tremendously. Let me know in the comments below what kind of anxieties that you've had and what you've tried to overcome, and let me know how this process is working for you. It certainly worked for me and the many men that I've coached. And don't forget to subscribe and to stay unapologetically yourself. Fuck.